Today we're going to talk about finding the greatest common factor, which is also referred to as the GCF. The greatest common factor is the greatest of the factors common to two or more numbers. To find this, you can do a list, or you can use prime factorization. You've probably used a list previously, and from now on, say no to the list and yes to prime factorization. For a couple of reasons, but the most important one being this prime factorization is a lot more efficient than writing a list of all the factors for whatever numbers you're working with. So let's review what prime factorization is. Prime factorization is expressing a number as the product of prime numbers. Now let's remember, prime numbers have only factors of 1 and itself. So how do we find prime factorization? Well, we'll start with a number here, 63. We're going to come up with two factors that when they multiply together equal 63. So here we have 9 and 7. Once you come to a prime factor, you want to circle that so you know that you've finished and you're done on that side. So 9 and 7. 7 has no other factors besides 1 in itself, so we're going to circle that. Now 9 is not prime, so we're going to break 9 down. What two factors equal 9? 3 times 3. So we're going to circle each of these 3's because those are prime numbers. So our factorization is going to be 3 times 3 times 7 equals 63. Again, this follows our definition because it's only prime numbers being multiplied. And from our last unit, you know that we can rewrite this with an exponent. So 3 to the second times 7 equals 63. And you always want to rewrite it with an exponent if you can. Now that we know how to find the prime factorization of a number, let's try to find the greatest common factor using prime factorization. So this example is asking for the GCF of 90, 54, and 80. So as you can see here, we did the prime factorization for each of the numbers. And on the bottom I have circled all of the prime numbers. So the prime factorization for 90 would be 3 times 3 times 2 times 5. For 54, 2 times 3 times 3 times 3. And 81, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And this is how it would look written out. Now the first step is that when finding the greatest common factor is to find the factor that is in all three prime factorizations. So if we look here, now remember, it has to be in all three. So here we have 3 and 3, 3 and 3, 3 and 3. So those are the only ones that are in all three prime factorizations. Even though there's a 3 here and a 3 here, there's not a third 3 up here by the 90, so we can include that 3. So the most important thing is that you only pick the factors that are in all three prime factorizations. So now the next step is to multiply those factors. So we have 3 times 3, 3 times 3, 3 times 3. So we're going to take this, because that's the common, 3 times 3, multiply to get 9, and that's our answer. The greatest common factor of 90, 54, and 81 is 9. Okay, here's a second example. Find the greatest common factor of 21 and 28. So if we break apart 21, we have 3 and 7. Both of those are prime, so they are circled. If we break apart 28, we have 4 and 7. 7's prime, so that's circled. And 4 is composite, so we break that down again to 2 and 2. So now when we write out the prime factorization here of 21 and 28, you notice that the only thing in common is 7 and 7. So our greatest common factor for this example is 7. Now some of you might be wondering, why didn't we multiply 7 times 7 like we did in the previous slide? And the reason for that is because there is only 1 7 for the 21 and 1 7 for the 28. In our previous example, it was 3 times 3 and 3 times 3 and 3 times 3. That was the common factors for all three. So if you have more than one number or factor in the prime factorization in all of your numbers, then you're going to multiply them together. But if it's just one factor that's the same, one number, it's just going, so we don't do this, it's just going to be that number. Okay, things to remember for this lesson. When you're finding the greatest common factor, you want to find the prime factorization of each number. Once you do that, look for the common factors. Then your third step may vary depending on your numbers. It's either the common factor, if there's only one, and that's your answer, or you're going to multiply together. So this is, we're going to say if needed. So if you have more than one factor that's common for each of your numbers, then you multiply together. If you only have one factor that's common, one number, that's your answer. So if it's factor, it's your greatest common factor. And here are some questions for you to do on your own. Make sure you show all of your work. You show your prime factorization like this with a tree and circle your prime numbers.